Hello, and welcome back to This Month on the Railroad, my monthly video covering railroad-related stories from around North America. For today's episode, we'll be going through the month of March 2023, which was filled with possibly some of the biggest stories of the year. Stay tuned. Before we get into the news, I'd like to thank this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is the best way to protect your personal information on the internet. Every time you use a public Wi-Fi network, such as in a coffee shop, at a library, or perhaps even on a train, your sensitive information is at risk of being seen by hackers. ExpressVPN creates a private tunnel for your information so that the only person it's visible to is you. Personally, I use ExpressVPN whenever I'm on public train Wi-Fi, and if you take trains as much as I do or ever use public Wi-Fi, I definitely recommend you do the same. If this sounds good to you, be sure to use the link in my description to get your first 3 months of ExpressVPN completely free. Thanks again for watching and enjoy the rest of the video. So, let's get into March. On March 1st, Brightline, Florida's private higher-speed rail, broke an obscure yet significant record. It became the fastest train in Florida history. Testing a 4-car Siemens Venture train set on the New Orlando high-speed line, Brightline was able to achieve a top speed of 130 miles per hour. Although trains won't actually go this fast in service, when Brightline eventually does open its New Orlando line to passengers, trains will be able to travel at 125 miles per hour, making Brightline one of the fastest trains in North America. A few days later, on the 6th, Amtrak P42 number 184, the Phase 4 Heritage Unit, ceased to be the Phase 4 Heritage Unit, being spotted in Chicago with a fresh coat of Phase 5 paint. Unfortunately, this could be a bad sign for Amtrak's 40th anniversary units. Although most of Amtrak's P42s are only a few years away from retirement, I guess some are still being repainted. It's unclear exactly why 184 was reverted to its regular paint scheme, as this hasn't happened to previous heritage units within the shop. I guess it's possible that we'll see a redemption unit, as we did with 130 and 161, but at this point that seems pretty unlikely. In happier Amtrak news though, on the same day, a second round trip to Vancouver, British Columbia was added to the Cascades schedule, officially bringing service back to the level it was at a few years ago. Now, the only Amtrak route that hasn't returned since 2020 is the Adirondack, although even that's due to come back this month. The next day, Siemens Mobility, which as you all know at this point is one of my favorite things to talk about, announced its plans to open a second rail equipment manufacturing plant in Lexington, North Carolina. This is a great sign for Siemens, which over the past few years has received countless equipment orders from various agencies across North America. This new plant will help Siemens to better cater to East Coast customers, including Amtrak's Piedmont, which is a future customer theorized by many to purchase equipment from this factory. In other Siemens news, on the 8th, Amtrak's new Siemens ALC 42 long-distance locomotives entered service on the Coast Starlight, making for a total of 3 routes to receive these locomotives so far. Although they've had some issues recently, it seems that the situation is slowly improving. Hopefully 2023 will be the year where the Charger really does take the P42's place as the new face of Amtrak. Finally on the 8th, the Surface Transportation Board approved the termination of Montana Rail Link's long-term lease of the BNSF rail line, which it operates in the state of Montana. Presumably later this year, BNSF will take control over this line once again, although no official transition date has been announced at this point. On the night of March 9th, an ominous announcement was made by the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority stating that a system-wide speed restriction would go into effect on all rapid transit lines following an unfortunate report from a Department of Public Works inspection. As is usually the case on the MBTA, not many were surprised by these findings, but nonetheless, this system-wide slow zone caused significant delays. As a Massachusetts resident myself, I experienced these delays firsthand, taking 25 minutes to travel between Ruggles and State Street, a trip that should usually take only about 15 minutes on the Orange Line. While the system-wide restriction was lifted a few days later, countless new slow zones were put into place, leading the MBTA to create an online slow zone tracker. I guess this is business as usual on the MBTA, but that doesn't make it any less frustrating for commuters. The next day, a slightly more functional rapid transit system, otherwise known as the New York Subway, entered long-awaited R211 subway cars into service on the A line, beginning a 30-day in-service acceptance test. The R211s are probably the most significant New York subway car design of the past 20 years, featuring a brand new look, fully digital signage, and open gangways on some cars. While the R211As that entered service on the 10th don't have these open gangways, the R211Ts that feature this design will make their debut later this year. On the 15th, following more than a year of negotiations, the Surface Transportation Board approved the merger of Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern, two of the biggest freight railroads in North America. This merger will forge CP-KC, or Canadian Pacific Kansas City, the first railroad ever to operate in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Given that this has been more than a year in the making, the CP-KC merger may be the biggest story of the year, and it's sure to have massive effects on the North American rail industry, consolidating the Class 1 freight railroads even further. According to the STB, CP-KC can begin operating as early as April 14th, at which point a new corporate regime, including operating standards, a new paint scheme, and effectively an entirely new company will take over. If one thing is for certain, Canadian Pacific Kansas City will be in the news quite a bit for years to come. On the 17th, the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority decided to indefinitely shelve the Norristown high-speed line extension to King of Prussia, something that many had expected for a while. For years, this project struggled to find funding, and for quite some time, it had been pretty clear that this just wasn't the best way to spend money. Honestly, it's probably for the better, as SEPTA has much more important projects to focus on in my opinion. 5 days later, on the 22nd, Amtrak released the findings of a 2-year study regarding a future New York to Scranton, Pennsylvania route. What they found was that this route would see around 470,000 annual riders and would create over $100 million in local economic development with 3 daily round trips. Comparing these numbers to the Keystone, a similar route in the region, 470K is a pretty healthy number, and it's certainly a good sign for the future of this project. At this point, it's up to both local politicians and Amtrak to make the New York to Scranton corridor a reality. Proposals call for a full restoration of the abandoned Lackawanna Cutoff in northern New Jersey, making for 110 mph top speeds and a travel time of under 3 hours between the two cities. On the 24th, a new paint scheme, or really wrap design, was selected for TriRail trains in South Florida. Doing away with the palm trees, this colorful design harkens back to the simpler designs of TriRail's past, while still looking modern. I'm definitely a fan, although I will miss the palm tree design. Finally, speaking more generally, there was quite a bit of derailment-related news this month. Obviously, in the weeks following the Norfolk Southern derailment in Ohio, railroads were in the news quite a bit more, including Norfolk Southern's CEO testifying against Congress regarding safety. But despite all this, there was another NS derailment in Alabama, one in Massachusetts, one CSX derailment in West Virginia, a few minor BNSF derailments out west, and towards the end of the month, a runaway Union Pacific train in California. What's worse is that these are just the incidents I can remember off the top of my head. While some of these derailments, such as the one on CSX, were the result of a local natural disaster, derailments as a result of poorly maintained track and bad equipment seem to be happening more and more. If I had to guess right now, I would predict that a major change is coming for freight trains here in the US. There have been ongoing debates between railroads and labor unions over fair working conditions for about a year now, a constant stream of derailments in the news. Congress is urging Norfolk Southern and all Class 1 railroads to stop precision-scheduled railroading, and frankly, it's pretty clear to me, and many others, that we're about to see the breaking point. At the same time as all this scrutiny of big freight railroads, the Surface Transportation Board is allowing 2 massive Class 1 freight railroads to merge into a mega railroad spanning 3 countries. If anything is for sure, I'd say we're bound to see more crazy stuff happen in the near future, so hold on tight. As I've said before, if you'd like to stay in the loop on these things when they happen, please consider subscribing or maybe even purchasing a channel subscription to make sure you're here for This Month on the Railroad every time it's uploaded. With that said, thanks for watching and I'll see you soon, hopefully before the end of the month, in another video.